All right, Alexander, we had a meeting of the Chinese defense minister with the Russian defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, over the weekend, over Easter weekend. But we had an even more interesting meeting, in my opinion, between the Chinese defense minister and the Russian president, which took place on a holiday on Easter Sunday. That's a big deal that the Russian president decided to meet with the Chinese defense minister on Easter Sunday. But it's also a very symbolic meeting in that you have the Russian president meeting with a defense minister, which means that this is very important for the Russians to be coordinating with the Chinese on a defense level. Defense minister to defense minister makes sense. Foreign minister to foreign minister, okay. But when you see a president or a prime minister meeting with someone who is lower on the diplomatic ladder, you know that they want to show that this is a very important meeting, and it's important enough for President Putin to meet with the Chinese defense minister on Easter Sunday. And of course, we have the video and the photos of that meeting as well.
That's absolutely correct. And of course, I mean, you come from a diplomatic family, so you understand what an unusual thing this is in protocol terms for the president of a country to meet with a visiting defense minister. And this is on Easter Sunday. It's not just a religious holiday in Russia, the most important religious holiday in Russia. It's also a day that Putin gives him, takes time off. So he gave up his holiday on an important religious day to meet with this defense minister. And this has given an enormous amount of attention in the Russian media. So we have a photo study, of all these, Putin meeting with this person. We have film broadcast on Russian television, apparently. We have transcripts of the introductory remarks that Putin and the Chinese defense minister exchanged. This is something that the Russians have given a huge amount of attention to. Now, why has this happened? Well, first of all, this defense minister is an important official. He's obviously the defense minister of China. So he's, by definition, an extremely important man. He's someone the Russians know very well, because he was the point man before between the Chinese military and the Russian military, a fact which, by the way, he pointed out himself in his introductory statements to Putin. He also he chose to come to Russia for his very first visit. And he's going to be there for apparently 3 days. This is a long visit. He's meeting Shoigu. Shoigu was also, by the way, present when Li Shangfu met Putin. And he's meeting all the top military leaders. I've just seen pictures of him visiting the Academy of the Russian General Staff. So this is an enormous meeting. Why is it happening? Why all this attention? Well, we had the visit last month by Xi Jinping to Moscow. And we've now had this procession of European dignitaries going to Beijing. We've had Macron, we've had Ursula, we've had Baerbock, we've had Michel apparently is thinking of going. Also, the Spanish Prime Minister, Sanchez, they've all been to Beijing. They've all been going to Beijing. We've had the Chinese refusing to interact with the Americans at all. They're not prepared to host Blinken in Beijing. They're not prepared to pick up the telephone to speak to Austin. And they're absolutely not prepared to talk to Zelensky either. And they're not prepared to talk to Biden himself. I mean, the Chinese are cutting all of that out. What has happened is that the Chinese and the Russians, they want to show to the world, but first and foremost to the Americans and to the Europeans, this relationship between us, Russia, China, is totally solid. Any attempts by you to try to find cracks in it, it's not going to work. All your attempts to talk us out of it, talk the Chinese out of it with all these people going to Beijing. It's not going to work. We are fully together and on side. And not only that, if you read the transcripts very carefully, the things in particular that Ling Shangfu said in his meeting with Putin, they presuppose extensive agreements between the Chinese and the Russians about mutual cooperation on the military field, and one which they're going to develop even further. And Li Shangfu said that it goes beyond what existed in Cold War during the alliances in the alliances that existed during the Cold War, including presumably the alliance that existed in the 1950s between the Soviet Union and China. So this is an enormously strong relationship. And the two sides want to make it clear to the world, and in particular to the West, how strong it is.
Right. In a sense, they're using these meetings as a type of deterrent from a potential war with the collective West, a wider war than what we're seeing in Ukraine. But don't you believe that the Chinese are indeed preparing for a war with the collective West, for some sort of smash over Taiwan?
Yes.
I mean, that's what it looks like to me. I think the Chinese, while they're showing all of these photos and videos and these meetings, and they're showing the world that we are Russia and China together in this, I imagine they are preparing for some sort of conflict.
Absolutely, no question about this, and that is partly what this is all about. I mean, historically, in the past, the first country a Chinese defense minister used to visit until about 10 years ago would have been the United States, because that was always the key relationship. Now, a Chinese defense minister is going to Moscow. It's not the first time. I mean, other Chinese defense ministers have tended to go to Moscow first, but that's been more the pattern over the last 10 years, and no meeting has been given the profile that this has done. This is, of course, consistent with the rising tensions in the South China Sea, the Taiwan Straits, the prospects of an armed clash between China and the United States. And Shoigu, the Russian defense minister, has just been to the Far East. He's done a snap inspection of the Russian Pacific Fleet. Putin is talking about the fact that naval development must be given priority, along with that of the military that's conducting the war in Ukraine at the moment. And one can't help but think that the Chinese and the Russians are comparing notes, agreeing plans, preparing for the battles, primarily in the Pacific, which are to come. And that is why Ling Shangfu went to Moscow.
Yeah. What are the Europeans, the Biden White House, what are they saying as they see all of this happen? What do you think that they're going to do?
Well, I think they're going to be absolutely dismayed and extremely concerned, but I'm afraid they will do what they always do. They will increase the speed of their two escalators. The sanctions escalator against China, and they're going to claim that the Chinese are helping the Russians to undermine sanctions, so we're going to start to see more and more sanctions against the Chinese. There's pushback in Europe against that. There's been an article in the Financial Times pushing back against that. But, that's coming. And the other thing they're going to do, or try to do, is to strengthen their military position in the Pacific in preparation for this armed clash, which is to come. Now, what effect that has on what they're doing in Ukraine is another thing. But I can't help but think, we touching on that very briefly, one of the reasons why this Ukrainian offensive that we've been hearing so much about is literally the last throw in the Ukraine war, is because after that, the focus is going to switch to the Pacific, because that's where the United States has to concentrate.
Yeah, they have to focus on China. Time is running out. Yeah. All right, let's leave it there. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and Telegram. And go to the Duran shop. Use the code GOODDAY, get 10% off. Take care.